Hello and welcome. I'm Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching India Today Global. A big geopolitical development has taken place in the Caribbean. US has carried out a military operation in Venezuela and they have extracted President Nicolas Maduro from the capital city of Caracas. There is a chaos, there is a commotion in Caracas city. And what will be the geopolitical subsequent consequences of this big development where the Nicolas Maduro is, what will happen in Venezuela, and what is the big plan of the United States? US President Donald Trump is going to address a press conference in few hours. To discuss this issue, I'm being joined by my colleague Geeta Mohan, who's the foreign affairs editor of India Today. Welcome to India Today Global, Geeta. And the big question remains here: why did US carried out this kind of operation, and what is the bigger and the louder message by the White House and President Donald Trump?
Well, Pranay, it's a Saturday. I'm not in Delhi, as you can see, not in the kind of warm clothing that you see, Pranay. And I thought it'll be a peaceful. We've been monitoring, Pranay and I, we've been monitoring what's happening in Venezuela, but I still thought, Pranay, it was going to be a peaceful day before I head back home to start work on Monday. But that was not to be, thanks to President Trump. But this is a very serious situation. The fact that unprecedented in the 1990s, we saw such a situation where the president of Panama was had surrendered in the Vatican embassy and then surrendered to the same Delta Force. And now we're looking at the same situation over here, but this time it's not a surrender; it's a quote unquote capture. How is that really going to play out? Because it's one thing to go to war; it's another
Exactly,
thing to
Geeta.
not
That is
follow
the
war
bigger
protocols.
question. But I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
But the
absolutely.
but the question remains here that did you see it coming? Was it in making since September 2025 onward when US made those, Caribbean deployment of the US Marine, US aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, and the force accretion there in the region? Did you see it coming?
No, Soprano, we were having this
Hmm,
discussion, and I was telling our
hmm,
bosses, Sukri
hmm,
Prasad,
hmm,
including
hmm,
Kalipuri, we
hmm,
were having this discussion, and I said, please
hmm,
monitor Venezuela. That's where things are
hmm,
going to get really crazy.
hmm,
But I did not think there's going to be capture.
hmm,
I mean that they're calling it a capture because he's wanted in America.
hmm,
There's an arrest warrant against him. There's a bounty on his head. But you and I know better than calling a leader being taken out from his own country as
hmm.
capture. This is almost like political abduction. Sorry to say, but there is a lot of
Hmm.
answering that will have to be done because what then are the protocols? How are countries going to react?
Absolutely, Geeta. And what will happen to
What's
the
going to
so-called rule-based
happen
order
to
US has always
any
advocated?
country, Pranay,
Hmm,
who, yes, yes. And
hmm,
Pranay, what will happen to, what happens next to them?
hmm,
Isn't that a question that most countries would have now?
hmm,
That the fear of being taken out of their own country.
hmm,
I did not imagine
hmm,
a so-called capture.
hmm,
I did imagine a
hmm,
warlike situation. We
hmm,
did discuss that this is the next surrender shows that we did. I put the links in the
hmm,
description where we in our year end we have said the countries to look out for. Venezuela topped that list
hmm.
with Iran.
I
And
would say,
look,
Geeta, that
come Jan 1st.
hmm. I would say, Geeta, that I kind of predicted it. I won't say that in exact fashion, but I think we do not take President Donald Trump and his statements very seriously. But if you see the trajectory of his statement, he has executed almost whatever he has said in his multiple statements. So he had already
Yeah,
indicated that we are actually
absolutely.
looking
You're
at,
right.
at regime change in Venezuela. And the way US has deployed, US troops, US Marines, US aircraft carrier in the region, that was clearly a bigger message be given out by the US,
That's
US
true.
President Donald Trump. And, this is also a bigger message for Iran here, Geeta. Yesterday, President Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social and he said that we are
That's
locked,
true.
loaded, and ready to go. This is the big message for Iran as well.
And
And,
he also said, Pranay, he
hmm,
also said for Iran, he also said that
hmm,
if you take action and kill protesters, we will come
yes.
after you. So
Absolutely.
that's
Hmm.
absolute clear message, because there is going to be some sort of
Hmm.
a clampdown by the Iranian
Hmm.
administration, should the protests become or go out
Hmm.
of hand, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
once that happens, that's clear signal that DC is going to take
But
action, or
clearly,
Pentagon in
that
particular.
is if this is the playbook, Geeta, this playbook can authorize US to intervene in the internal affairs of any country for that matter. Isn't it a very dangerous thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It came as a shocker, because, again, I'm
Hmm.
saying this. We
Hmm.
predicted all of this
Hmm.
conflicts, it's going to be a war like situation. But picking up Maduro and his wife,
Hmm.
that, Pranay, is in recent times unprecedented. You take terrorists out. You killed
Hmm.
Abu Bakr al Baghdadi. They took Osama out
Hmm.
and then
They're the head of a
took his
government.
body out.
Ah.
But, and
Hmm.
see, the Nobel Peace Prize was an
Absolutely,
indication.
yeah. Ah. Hmm.
The Nobel Committee was very smart in ensuring that they give it to somebody who Trump will not be
Hmm.
completely,
Hmm.
angered about or
And
riled
she called
about.
up President Donald Trump after this.
She not
And
only
now,
called him up,
huh.
she gave the entire credit. She
Yes.
honored him with the Nobel Prize. She said it should actually be him, and so on and
Hmm.
so forth.
Hmm.
That was clear messaging that, she is
So in
giving.
retrospect, all the dots were connected, and there is a pattern in it. You want to say?
There's an absolute pattern
Hmm.
in what has happened, and this
Hmm.
is this is a regime change. This
Hmm.
is America indulging in regime change yet again. The
Hmm.
playbook has changed, the intent has not.
Hmm.
Intent remains the same, that anybody that opposes the US administration will have to suffer at the hands of America with a blow of a regime
Geeta,
change.
just now a tweet from U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio has come, and it reads that Maduro is not the president of Venezuela, and his regime is not the legitimate government. Maduro is the head of the Cartel de los Soles, a narco-terror organization which has taken possession of a country, and he is under indictment for pushing drugs into United States. So clearly, U.S. Secretary of State has made out the case, as far as President Maduro is concerned, and what U.S. is up to. So they have negated the validity of President Maduro here, and they have clearly spelled out that he is liable for a punishment, for pushing drugs and narcotics in the United States.
No,
So,
but
hmm,
then, Pranay, what are the rules? If
hmm,
it's a drug lord, if he's a drug lord, what are the
hmm,
rules? Are you going to enter a country and take somebody out of that country? And then you're looking at regime change. So you're not
hmm,
recognizing him as the president because you think he was illegally, he placed himself there, right?
hmm.
Then the charges have to be what? Of drug trafficking? Are those the charges that are going to be leveled against him in court? Or is it going to be more of
Obviously,
the
there has
what is
been.
the sentencing here?
So U.S. courts have already tried and sentenced Nicolas Maduro. There is a bounty on his name. So there is already a case in
Bounty to capture
United States
him, but
to
what's the
bounty to capture.
sentencing? What's
Hmm.
the sentencing? What will it be? How many years
So,
for a
so,
drug
so
lord?
now, so now they have to try him. They have to present him in U.S. court if he has been arrested. The U.S. has to show that they have arrested Nicolas Maduro, and if they are charging him to be a drug cartel or a drug lord, then he will be tried as per as the narco rules of the United States. But this is going to be a very a serious development, and now we have to see. This is also a larger and a bigger message. Do you see a clear pattern, the way things happened with Saddam Hussein and against Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the entire case of weapons of mass destruction, and here in Nicolas Maduro's case, the case against narco terrorism, sponsorship of narco terrorism, and extracting Nicolas Maduro out of of Venezuela. If you see pre-1999, US and Venezuela had very good relation. They established their diplomatic relations as long as 1835 onwards, and they enjoyed good relation, good
Chavez
partnership.
changed that then.
And yeah, and then Hugo Chavez changed the
Yes.
thing. So that Bolivarian revolution changed the entire spectrum of US Venezuela relation. But the bigger question here is it all about the oil politics President Donald Trump want to play here? Because
Absolutely. And in the Caribbean, there are absolutely this before
hmm,
what happened during the Russia-Ukraine war, when the
hmm,
initial steps were being taken and Biden administration said stop oil.
Hmm.
from Russia, sanctioned Russia.
Hmm.
What was the first alternative they looked at? They actually looked at Venezuela. Those conversations did not move forward, and then because they first looked at OPEC and Saudi said they're not going to increase their production just because
Hmm.
you wanted to take Russia to war, or take
Hmm.
Ukraine and go ahead with the Russia Ukraine war. They're not going to do that. And then
Mhm.
they actually had conversations for the first time in decades with Venezuela. Those talks failed, and this was Biden administration. And that's when they came back to, okay, engaging West Asia, and
Hmm.
asking India to buy oil at a capped price and then sell it to Europe. All this happened. People don't realize how critical that was in the decision making. And Trump administration, for them,
Hmm.
drug trafficking is not just, it's not just Venezuela. Why so hard and harsh on Venezuela? We have drug cartels everywhere, including their own border, the southern border in Mexico, right?
Mhm.
And yet you have taken, there is a huge oil reserves in Venezuela.
And Geeta, I remember our conversation when President Donald Trump, took office, and when he said, the drill, baby, drill. His From his rhetoric of drill, baby, drill to his politics and his, the use of military might of the United States in regions like, in Iran, the another oil-rich country, asserting pressure on Russia, another oil exporter, a big oil exporter, and the politics of West Asia and the Gulf region, where US has sizable influence. So clearly, President Donald Trump, or under his leadership, the current US administration is all for oil and controlling the oil politics or the geopolitics of oil on the planet.
That's right. Another news that's coming in,
Hmm.
Pranay, is that the foreign minister, Juan Gil Pinto, has
Hmm.
now asked, or as requested an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council in response
Hmm.
to the American attack. The Russians also actually reacted. Let's just talk about reactions, because
Hmm.
I see that what the next step is going to be a UNSC meeting,
Hmm.
because Venezuela is seeking one. Russians already sought one when the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs called it an armed aggression, condemned it completely, said that they're going to stand by Venezuela, and they've sought for a UN meeting. So I suppose the next step is going to be a UN Security Council meeting on Venezuela.
Hmm. Obviously, countries like the kind of reaction coming from
And the
Moscow.
statement, the letter that has been sent to the UN, according
Hmm.
to,
Hmm.
yes, it says, no, this is from Foreign Minister Juan Gil Pinto, that no
Hmm.
cowardly attack will prevail against the strength of this people who will emerge victorious.
Hmm.
So
There are,
that's
there
again.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, Diosdado Cabello, who's the Interior Affairs Minister of Venezuela, he's out on street with troops. In fact, the Venezuelan television is broadcasting the visuals of the Interior Affairs Minister, in the bulletproof jacket, in a bulletproof helmet, and he is addressing not only troops, but he's also giving out a message to people of Venezuela. This is the time for us to stand up to aggressor. But I don't think so that US will have boots on ground here, unlike Iraq or unlike Afghanistan. Here, they have surgically executed their operation. They have extracted the president, and through their own levers, they will ensure. Because what an operation here! Let us talk about the
That's
military
true.
tactics. Also, Geeta here, because before Venezuelan forces could give any reaction, and see, they have extracted the most protected person on the Venezuelan soil. So they have taken out the president and his wife, and before Venezuelan military could react or take some action. So I'm sure they must have worked out that entire plan, and within a span of few minutes, they have executed it. They have bombarded the Fortaleza, the military fortress or the military base in Caracas, and 7 to 8 explosion. And before military could respond, they have extracted the president and they are out of the country.
That's right. I can't tell you the kind of
Hmm.
precision with which the Delta Force and the administration has acted, because everybody did think that this is an escalation that is going to end up in massive
Hmm.
conflict in the Caribbean. Colombian president has been reacting to it. He's been himself sharing videos and talking about it. So the Caribbean, Latin America focused
Hmm.
on this very, very closely, watching and monitoring every development, statements
Hmm.
coming in from various quarters and various countries, Pranay. But I
Hmm.
don't think anybody. And then, when the morning escalation happened with the
Hmm.
airstrip being attacked, with key installations, like you said, being taken down, that was an indication that this certainly means America trying to ensure that there is a collapse of the regime. Collapse
Hmm.
of the regime would have meant that they would have fled their residential homes, their official residences, and
Hmm.
most of them would have tried to flee the country.
Absolutely. That you made a very important and interesting point, Geeta, here that the US has extracted President Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela, but now his party, his close, lieutenants, and in fact, many of his supporters are still there. They are still in charge. Military and the forces of Venezuela are still obeying their orders. How are they going to ensure the regime change? Because it's the continuation. Nicolas Maduro continued the policy of Hugo Chavez, and many of his party members and supporters are still there. So why and how, will we should not think that there will be a continuation of the same Nicolas Maduro regime in Venezuela.
Absolutely. I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know how Pranay, how is the Trump administration going to justify this to the Armed Services Committee?
Hmm.
Because they were not informed, according to CNN. There was no prior information that was given. Now, how are they going to justify this? Because you're right. Every congressman from the Democratic side are going to say, "What next? We could have done the same thing." But
Hmm.
taking out the president just because he's
Hmm.
wanted here, and there are charges that he's been
Hmm.
convicted and sentenced in America, just taking him and his wife out, how
Hmm.
does that serve your
Purpose.
purpose? You've disbanded, not been defeated, and you have given enough time for the world to react now. Now we'll have to see what Iran, what
Hmm.
China, what Russia really do with this, because this is a story that's unfolding, that's
Hmm.
developing. It's happening right in front of our eyes. There is
Hmm.
going to be a lot of questions to the Trump administration
Does
back
it
home.
embolden, Xi Jinping in Beijing that if they want to execute the unification, which President, Xi Jinping recently said in his address to nation, that it is inevitable and this no one can, this is unstoppable, the reunification of motherland. Will he get emboldened by these actions? Because this is a clear message that either it's my way or highway.
I don't know whether we'd say emboldened, but I think he will hasten his pace,
Hmm.
because he already made that statement and he's seeing that this is the only
Hmm.
opportunity. Trump
Hmm.
has already said that in our conversation, Xi Jinping assured me that he's not going to,
Hmm.
till I'm around, he's not going to take over
Hmm.
Taiwan. But he
Hmm.
must be thinking that
Hmm.
US is so tied up with Israel, with a bit of Russia, Ukraine, with
Hmm.
now Venezuela, that this could be his moment. But I would flip that question, Prana, and ask
Hmm.
you,
Hmm.
do you think for Xi Jinping
Hmm.
right now it is important to take Taiwan, which America anyway adheres to the one China policy, which
Hmm.
he can do a little later, or is it
Hmm.
time for China to say, well, not on my watch? You're not going to take my friends out of their country on my watch.
Hmm.
This could be the tipping point where countries could emerge as, or maybe a reality check on which country actually is a superpower. Could
The
could this be
distance
the
between
moment?
Venezuela, Caracas, and Beijing might be too far, like a very long distance, but it has its own direct, connection and implication for Beijing. Because if you see, the biggest oil supplier, two of the biggest oil
Yes.
suppliers for China are Iran and Venezuela, both facing sanctions. China is one of the biggest buyer, and both their economies are facing a lot of stress right now and under the duress because of the US-led actions. So, I think it is basically
No, they're
a
also they're
maximum
also
pressure
facing
policy.
regime change, Pranay.
Yes,
For
regime
Xi
change,
Jinping, that will be a bigger threat than
bigger
right
threat.
now Taiwan reunification.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think they would be more concerned. They would be watching this thing, and we are waiting to see what will be the reaction from Beijing on these developments? Because recently there have been statement of support from Tehran and from Moscow for Venezuela, and also there have been statements of support from Beijing. But in the United Nations Security Council, when this matter will be taken up, and in fact, this is, as you rightly mentioned, Geeta, that this is quite indefensible for many of the U.S. Lawmakers also. The way it has been executed, all out and open, you go raid any country and you extract a president. If this is going to be the way, then President Donald Trump might be able to change half of the world leadership if he doesn't like them. Because,
Absolutely.
hmm,
I mean, it's just I don't know. We're still trying to get our heads around what is going to
hmm,
happen next, because one, we did not anticipate this. Now, what
hmm,
happens next? You're right.
hmm,
China is quite far away, but China also has countries that could act as their China's proxies in the region, uh,
hmm,
sending arms, military. But can the Latin American countries come together? Nobody has the military power in that region, so to say, to take on
hmm,
America. And it's
hmm,
too close to home for America not to be able to defend. So they're going to
hmm,
use the entire power to ensure that this decision is protected, secured, and justified.
hmm,
That's where Pranay, it gets really, really
hmm,
difficult.
hmm.
What is China going to do? What's Russia
Absolutely.
going to do?
And
Russia
Geeta,
has its own
China
interests.
has active interest, their active economic interest. They have companies there in Venezuela, especially in their petrochemical sector, especially in
Yes,
their energy sector. And in fact, like China National Petroleum Corporation or China Concord Resources, all these big companies, which are directly the Chinese companies, state-owned companies, corporations, they are there in. So I'm sure China must be a worried country right now, not only in terms of their oil resource got dried up or going to change, and also they must be worried about their investment in Venezuela.
absolutely, absolutely. The next thing that we will be looking at, let's just recount that, and maybe Pranay, you and I
Hmm,
can just
hmm,
add
hmm,
before we wrap up. One
hmm,
is how our country is going to react to this.
hmm,
Secondly, how are American lawmakers going to react to it? Because
hmm,
this certainly is a violation of war powers, because he was not authorized war powers by the
hmm,
committee that is to authorize him, right? Because they were not
hmm,
informed.
hmm,
Then the expats, the foreign nationals who are there in Venezuela, which includes Indian nationals as well, should they be
hmm,
evacuated? How will they be evacuated? There are foreign interests in terms of businesses that are there. What's going to
hmm,
happen to them? So there are a
hmm.
lot of questions that maybe you and I will start breaking them down in the coming days and hours as things unfold. Anything
Gita,
else that you
last thing.
see, Pranay, that
Last
we
thing.
should
I
look
actually
at and
want your
anticipate?
thoughts. Yeah, I actually wanted your opinion about, or maybe your thoughts on what is going to be India's reaction.
I think very measured, very
Hmm.
cautious, as it should be right now, given that we are fighting. See, every country, even Russia, will be very. Russia has condemned it, but they will
Yes.
be a little cautious in whether they should be. They said we back Venezuela. What is backing
Hmm.
Venezuela? Are they going to go in?
Hmm. Hmm.
So we also ours will be more measured than Russia.
Yes.
Ours will be more measured than Russia. We will reiterate it's not an era of war. We'll
Hmm.
reiterate dialogue is the only way forward. We'll reiterate that people are important and we stand by the people of Venezuela. I
Hmm.
suppose those are the reiterations.
As the famous saying goes, most of the countries only determine and think about their own interest, Gita. There are
Yes.
no permanent friends, there are no permanent foes, there are only permanent interests. So probably, many countries would think that if the US uh, intervention leading to a situation where the Venezuelan oil reserves will be open, the oil will be pretty cheaper and it will be accessible to countries or like, countries like India. We used to buy oil from Venezuela and, because of the US sanction, we had to stop our oil purchase. But now, if there is a possibility of opening up of those oil supplies, then we might like to buy that oil.
Maybe, or we'll have to wait and very cautiously step forward as to what our so
Hmm,
called partners are thinking and how they're going to react to us. Buying or
hmm,
not buying oil, that's a very sensitive matter, Pranay.
Yes.
Buying oil has become a very sensitive matter for India.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But definitely a very, you can call it a shock and awe kind of action here in
absolutely.
Venezuela. And we have to see, viewers, we will keep tracking these developments in Venezuela from Washington, D.C. as well, because President Donald Trump is likely to address a press conference. And all these questions, what you might be having or whatever we have discussed, we hope that President Donald Trump would answer these questions, and we'll keep tracking these developments and get you all the latest developments and more news breaks. Thank you very much, Geeta, for joining from Bangalore, and see you soon. And we'll have a more longer conversation, a more informed conversation
Absolutely.
subsequently.